this is your friendly neighborhood Chicano Andy with finally another episode of Andy's Comic Stash. And yes, it's been a long time. No, I'm not gonna explain why, nor am I gonna say I'm gonna do better because I always jinx it. So vámonos, let's just start this episode. But before that, be sure to like and subscribe onto this channel. And any other extra support or wanting to find out the comic book shop I work at, links are on the description below. This video in particular has been a long time coming. Possibly one of my most infamous stories I talk about at work. Specifically speaking, we're talking about my very first comic book. I'm talking about that one book that really opened up your eyes to a whole new world. That one book that solidified the addiction of comic books. Whether you were 1 year old or today years old, everyone should remember their very first comic book. Or at least that's what I thought. And this, my friends, is the story of my very first comic book. For those that don't know, I was born to parents that only spoke Spanish. Speaking it was a little easier thanks to TV, but reading English was a whole nother story. I specifically remember refusing not to read books, just because all the words kind of hurt me. They hurt my eyes. I'm like, to say the very least, my confidence wasn't like all there because of that. Now, I'd assume that the school may have called my parents, telling them that their boy wasn't reading. So my dad took me to our local mall here in Fresno. Now, as we were walking through the mall, my dad kind of just looks down at me and goes, "Hey, mijo, I heard you can't read." Paraphrasing, of course, I was like, So what if I can't read? Leave me alone, type thing. And then, of course, my dad be like, "What do you mean so? Don't be a burro, start reading. It's the key to life. How about this? Let's go to this comic book shop and pick up a comic book. No toys, though." My dad figured that comic books have less words, so it could be like a stepping stone to reading. Mind you, he's not into comic books at all, by the way. Regardless, he took me to my very first comic book shop. Shout out to Steve, Bruce, and Tom, by the way. Collectible Zone, Fresno, what's up? Looking at all those covers like overwhelmed me, but the one that stood out the most was that beautiful issue 1 of Gambit, circa 1993. It's a black stock cover, but with some gold foil onto it where the words are. On top, you see Gambit kind of throwing his cards like, First thought in my head was like, I'm gonna make so much money off this comic book. You know, pretty much everyone's mindset in the 90s. The cover resounded to me because it had the same artwork as the animated series. So as a kid, I would resonate to that character and wanting to know more of this character that I saw from TV. Once I cracked open the book at home, wow, I really felt like a genuine comic book guy. But going back to me and liking the show, I could hear like the distinctive voices from the show in my head as I sounded out the words on the talking bubbles. And before I knew it, I was reading English. I was like, oh snap. Granted, on detail, there were some words I couldn't really read because Gambit is Cajun, meaning he's gonna have some French words. But at some point I ended up reading, Mon cher, mon ami. Another big difference was that these dudes in the comic books were doing a little bit more adult things than the show did. For example, in that comic book, Gambit was holding like someone that was dying. I didn't see that in the cartoons, like, whoa! Another thing was Wolverine smoking a cigar. To any comic book guy, that's, pretty common knowledge. But to my first comic book, but only relating to the show didn't have Wolverine smoking a cigarette. Not that I remember. So all around that comic book just blew my mind. I must have read that book like a million times. Just feeling pretty confident in reading everything on it. Also the narration boxes onto the side. My confidence was exploding. And from that point on, I did pick up chapter books. All because of that one comic book. But that poor comic book went through everything. We're talking bullies. We're talking my back pocket when I was playing soccer. It wasn't even bagged and boarded. I didn't even really know how to take care of a book. I didn't have too many comic books at the time, but that was the one that was just most beaten up. And remember guys, this comic book is like a cardstock, so it should last a little bit longer than your typical comic book. Pero no, your boy found a way to mess that up. Fast forward to a couple of years, I was 18 years old and I finally got my first job. Before that, I only just took advantage of whenever there was like a dollar bin sale or a 50-cent sale, or hoping dad would spring for a really expensive book. But being 18 and thinking $300 and something in my pocket was a lot of money meant that I can buy new comic books. At that time, I was picking up specifically Captain America, the Brubaker books. Again, shout out to Collectible Zone, specifically Steve, Bruce, and Tom. Fun fact, one of the dudes works with me at Legends. As my collection was growing and growing and growing, I sift through some old boxes and wouldn't you know, I found my Gambit book in the worst condition I've ever seen in my life. So I immediately put it in a bag and board like, I didn't want to devalue it and stowed it away in one of the most precious parts of my room. I didn't really think nothing of it other than just keeping that first book. For those that know me, I run on nostalgia more than coffee, and I love my coffee. So stuff like that, I'm gonna keep forever. I was just lucky enough to find it. Fast forward another couple of years, I get the job at Legends Comics and Games. And back in that time, which is still presently, they had comic book forums. This one in particular was more for our veteran dudes, the ones that knew their stuff from the 80s and older, which I kind of fawned a little bit thanks to my Captain America collection. And one of the segments for the forum was to bring, just like a show and tell type thing. And of course, I shared my very first comic book to everyone. And of course, they got all the laughs in the world, but in a good way. It was good laughs, well, I hope. I did learn a few things at forum. One, with the knowledge that I know some comic books are worth money or not worth money. For sure, the Gambit, even in its best condition, it's still like maybe a $15, $20 book. I think to this day, it's still worth $15 or $20. And two, a lot of my veteran dudes most likely don't remember their first comic book. It's been that long. Like one dude shared saying that, "Oh, I had to buy a copy of my very first comic book and it went for really expensive. I should have kept my original." Another dude was more like, "I don't even remember my first comic book, man. Was it an Archie? What is a Dell comic? I don't remember." Those dudes that night scared the crap out of me. So I felt even more lucky to still have my first comic book. That night at home, I was rereading it, and sure enough, that comic book was in its last leg. I'm talking about the staples was unhinging, the cover and the back cover, it was falling off. A few ripped pages where the pages were intact, but back in the day, I had a bully that actually ripped one of the parts and put their gum, whatever, it's still a whole page. A lot of the pages were kind of off-white, and it's sad to see. I remembered it very well as a new book. Cardstock and the shiny. It was not, I didn't want to pull the plug. I did not want to pull the plug. So the forum scared me to wanting to slab and grade the book. For those that don't know, slabbing and grading a book is, primarily to hold the value of a comic book. So if you have a really G book and it's in a very good condition, you send it to get it graded. It's graded as a very high points, get some money off of it. Luckily for me, I really don't give a damn about what people do in their life, and people shouldn't give a damn of what I do in my life. My mission was to preserve my very first comic book for endless time. And I remember specifically saying, I don't even care if it's a 0.5 or a no grade. I'm saving my very first comic book, the one that taught me how to read English. Still was a bit skeptical, so I went to the boss of the shop, told him my situation, and he straight up said, "Dude, yes, let's do it." But to make it worth my while, at the time I also had a Gambit issue 1, all gold foil cover that I got a year ago prior at LA Comic-Con. And I didn't think much about that book either. Fun fact about that comic book, it was a variant cover in the 90s. So for those that know about variant covers, there's 1 in 25 ratios, 1 in 50 ratios. Back in the 90s, ratio variants were kind of like Wild Wild West. You kind of had to know the guy that knows Diamond Distribution at the time. So you can have 4 to 5 comic book shops having a very different result. Example, one comic book shop would be like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna buy 100 of Gambit issue 1 so I can get that gold cover." Or another guy would be like, "Oh yeah, well I'm gonna have 200 copies so I can get 2 gold covers." Another guy would be like, "Well, I only bought 50 of them and I got 2 covers." The other guy's like, "Wait a minute, I bought 300 of this cover, I didn't get crap." But then the fifth and final store would be like, "I didn't buy any of this crap, but I have 5 gold covers." Again, variant covers in the 90s were Wild Wild West. Ah! So with all that in my head, I snagged and got it. I had to get it. Fast forward to a year later, I would send that with my very first copy to CGC, thanks to Legends Comics and Games, by the way. Thank you, I'm still thankful for it. I'm always thankful for it, yes. This was also around the time of the pandemic. I hope and prayed it would come through at least the same book. I don't want insurance money, I want my book. The turnaround times on a lot of these comic books were immense too. A week before the books actually came through, the owner of the shop comes by to where I was at the cash register. He goes, "Hey man, so I got the gradings on the book. Do you want to know or you want to be surprised?" I'm like, "Nah, dude, I want to know. What's up?" Sure enough, the boss tells me, "Do you want to know about your original copy?" I go, "Yes." "It's a 0.5. I'm like, "No, yes, dude. any collector, a 0.5 is like, what's wrong with you? To me, it was a badge of honor. I'll talk about this later. But the one that surprised me was when he told me the grade on the golden book. He straight up said it was a 9.8. So I'm like, what? One side of me was like, dude, they probably felt sorry for me for that really messed up copy. It's like, oh, this poor bastard, let's just give him a 9.8 on this book, on the golden one. So I was excited, winning's winning. But on the other side, and then this is just a side note, the owner and I looked at that book before we sent it, the golden book. I just hoped it was gonna be a 9. Mind you, this is like my first time kind of like assessing a book and grading things. But I have this thing where I'm kind of like, I'm hard on myself. I try to see it as is, no matter how much it hurts. And I just hope that golden book was at least a 9. And the boss agrees, like, yeah, I hope it's a 9. I don't know, because there was like something in the middle. I like to suffer, but it got a 9.8. Even though I see things that ain't a 9.8, but hey, winning's winning. Shout out Vin Diesel, what's up? Week passes by, I go to work and I see the Fragile box. I'm like, it's gotta be my books. Open it up. I saw my very first book, slabbed and graded in a beautiful 0.5. I almost wanted to cry. My wife was there on the side. I'm just like, I post a photo on our social media. Some follow up to when I posted it. I've had some people messaging me going, what the heck is wrong with you? You know when you grade things, it has to be a graded book that's a hit, that's a this and that, it should be expensive. And then I have I've had more DMs going like, this is why our yearly subscription is more because Yahoo is grading everything. And I kind of didn't want to pay attention to it, but I gave some shots to myself by saying, you know what else too? Like a CGC snob, you don't read your stuff. If you didn't read my comments, I graded it because it was the book that taught me how to read English. I'm not a Yahoo that just grades things. I graded it because it was my holy grail. So I had that one side kind of like, but I did have that other side like, whoa! Again, especially those veteran dudes that I was telling you about, like, dude, I would have killed to not only have my very first comic book with me, but go ahead and grade it, solidify it for years to come, for eons, you know what I mean? One pendulum was crazy, the other one was like, a good crazy. And of course, for those that know me, I've annoyed everyone about the book. I must have had that book for a month displayed at the shop. Told everyone the story. I'm just proud of the book. What else can I say, man? I was proud of my book. It's the book. And just when you think the story's over, hold my beer. Around that time, I started going to cons, you know, Albuquerque Comic Con, Heroes Con, New York Comic Con, but the one con that I for sure wanted to take it to was Heroes Con. On the first year, I know it's been that long, I know, I'm sorry. But on the first year, I had Lee Weeks and Klaus Janson in the same room. And yes, I did what you're thinking. I went and got my 0.5 book signed, right on the case. Another boo-boo for the collectors. You're supposed to have the book with the CGC witnesser and have it, you know, graded and then get a signature series like a yellow label for it. Once again, the abomination turned into an even more abomination by just having it signed up in the front. First one, Lee Weeks. Went up to him, said thank you very much for the artwork. This was got me reading. And he was a cool dude, but he did question. He goes, wait, you don't want me to crack it open? And jokingly I went, yeah, but it would ruin the value. So he started laughing and went, do you like the color blue? And I'm like, I love the color blue. So he just signs it, Lee Weeks, man. I'm like, dude, the dude that drew it, not bad. Creator number 2 was Klaus Janson on colors. For those that don't know, that man has done coloring for Frank Miller, specifically Dark Knight Returns. So you can well imagine how intimidating his line was. Bunch of people, Dark Knight Returns, and my dumbass having, you got my point of a, you know, very underrated book in my opinion. But when I got to Klaus, like, he loved it. He thought it was cool. He even asked me about like the grader notes. And I'm telling you, it looked like a rap sheet, like someone's like criminal rap sheet. Like halfway through the list, he just started laughing. He did not stop laughing. It's like, give me that book. I want to sign, give me that book. And he signs it. I'm like, yes, let's go. Ooh. I'm telling you, this book was getting more love than it should. Now, the third and final dude, Howard Mackey, actually didn't make the appearance for that year. He was supposed to be there, but I guess he canceled. I think it was an emergency, so, you know, it's just probably emergency. I get it. But that was the guy I for sure wanted his signature because he wrote it. He specifically taught me English. So fast forward to my first New York Comic Con. I had it displayed with the signatures. I even jokingly put it on our shelves on our booth, and I did put a price on it, like I was trying to sell it. And I put it at worth $400 bazillion. I actually had one guy lowballing me at $200 bazillion, and I'm like, nah, sorry dog, I can't part ways with that. What can I say? I play hardball. But of course, fast forwarding to that New York, like everyone loved it too. People saw it, people laughed, people loved the story. Thus why I'm putting it on video. Even though I'm putting it on video, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna be telling the story for the rest of my life. From that point on, I was known as the 0.5 kid. Oh, and then to relate to that story of this shirt, before New York Comic Con, we were looking through like the shirts. My thing is that I want to get the con shirts to say I was there. It's kind of like the concert where I was there for that band to see. And I don't know what happened, but CGC teamed up with New York Comic Con and they had a 9.8, a Gem and 10, which I got for my wife, and a 0.5. It was like, the con was like, let's think of some ideas. What would Andy like for shirts? You know, he's coming to New York, by the way. We're gonna have to create a shirt for him. Oh, I have an idea. He recently got a 0.5 on his book. Let's do a 0.5 shirt. How jolly good time, let's do it. That's literally what happened, word for word. The only difference is that this says, you know, poor, 0.5, off-white. My comic book is white pages. I really don't know how, but it has white pages. So fast forward a couple of more months or so, I go to Heroes Con once more. This was back in July, algo así. And for sure, Howard Mackey was gonna be there. And the best part is, I told you guys, one of the dudes that sold me my very first comic book works with me. He went to the trip with me. So my full circles are like collecting. You can well imagine how much I cried. And your boy loves to cry. Scratch that. I don't love to cry. I just cry. Latinos, you know. So it's day one of Heroes Con of this year. In a sense, I felt like, oh, I'm not so rookie anymore. I know what's up. But low-key, it was like, I'm still new to this stuff, man. I still haven't really traveled as far as I feel like I did. Before going to the con, I've already mapped out where Howard Mackey's gonna be. For sure, he didn't cancel. Like, I know he's not gonna cancel. And on that first day, I was looking at his table. He wasn't there. It's just like an assistant. I'm just like, okay, fine. But I knew for a fact he was gonna be there. Around that time, he started writing Ghost Rider. I think it was Danny Ketch's Ghost Rider. So I'm like, oh, my boy's still writing, not bad. So about 2 more hours going to the con, I'm at the booth and there was like, hey, yo, walk around, take a break. I'm like, all right, for sure, I'll do that. And I'm walking just to skulk around, see if he's there. And sure enough, Howard Mackey was there. And I started kind of choking up a bit. I'm like, oh, this is it. This is the end of the journey for my book. And it really hit me. Like, I gave this book a tour. It went across the country so many times. And mind you, this is a nothing book. Even if it was a 9.8, I think there's like a 10 available for this. And it's not worth that much. It's funny. It's my book though. It's a good book. I'm in line, he's talking to other people. I'm just kind of like waiting for my turn. I'm about to like break into tears. When the homeboy in front of me finally moved away, he's like, oh, thank you very much. You know, shaking the man's hand. I go, Mr. Mackey, how are you? My name is Andy. And I'm just trying to hold it in. I'm like, just letting him know of the journey that I told you guys, the journey of my book. It's like, pretty much telling him the whole story that I was telling you guys and shaking his hand once more before he signed it by saying, thank you for teaching me how to read English. He, as a funny guy, he's actually a funny guy. He goes, no, wait, don't put that on me. No. I'm like, yes, I am gonna put that on you. That is your fault. It was cool. It was like good banter. He was a cool dude. He was explaining to me that he had a few other people kind of doing the same thing too. And I went back by saying I also pretty much learned a little bit of Cajun too. Mon cher, mon ami in the books. Sure enough, he took my book. He signed it right on top. And I felt like the journey was wrapped up. Shook the man's hand again, passed by him a few times at the con, you know, from that whole weekend. The moment I came back to the booth, I saw one of the owners and Steve, you know, the guy that bought the book from, showing them that it's done, it's solidified. I have it signed. I welled up a bit. I did tear up a little bit. I didn't want to tear up too much because I'm like, dude, come on, hold it up. We're in public, you know, but I couldn't help it. I was just going, and I'm looking at my boy Steve. I go, hey, this is you, homie. This is you, you know? That was good. Now, right now, I'm pondering how much that book, like as far as journey, it has a lot of journey in it. That book has been through so much, you know, grubby little kids, I like reading it. Just slabbing it and graded it, you know, to immortalize it, and then taking it across the country twice, and you know, it's gonna be a third time now. New York, stay tuned. I can safely say this book is gonna be with me until the good Lord takes me home. Hopefully I can pass it along to somebody, let them know, hey, this was the book that taught me how to read English. Fun side note, Steve, the guy that I bought the comic book from, also went to Howard Mackey's line, and he goes, hey, so did a guy with a 0.5 come at your booth? And he goes, yeah, that's right, Andy. Yeah, I sold him that book. That was me. Steve, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, I tried making your voice. I'm not very good at it. It was nothing but love at that con, and there's nothing but love with that book. I guess the journey's over with this one, but I mean, I'm gonna take it one more time to New York this year. But in the meantime, here it is, guys. There she is. Check out that 0.5, and it's white pages, I told you, but still a 0.5. You got Howard Mackey right here in the signature, Klaus Janson in the bottom, and my first signature, Lee Weeks right here. You can tell, dude, look how beaten up this book is. Check that out. All beaten the heck up. There's a little missing thing here. Check that out. I never got my VHS, by the way, guys. What's up? Another fun fact about this book, this was held by my boy Comic Tom 101, shout out, and the G himself, Jim Steranko. It was so weird having a Silver Age god holding a 90s book like this. Wow. I'm telling you, this book, it's got too much love. Well, guys, this is the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. Me and the Legends crew are gonna be at New York Comic Con on October 12th to 15th. I'm gonna be at booth 2577. So if you happen to be around the neighborhood, or you are going to New York too, stop on by and say what's up. I can regale you with the story of my first comic book again, or how that we're driving from Fresno to New York. Whatever it is, if you guys happen to see me or my crew there, come on through, we'll have a good time. Once again, be sure to like and subscribe onto my channel. And for any more further support for this channel, or if you want to check out the shop I work at, Legends Comics and Games, the links are gonna be in the description below. And remember the 3 things I always say: read comic books, trade save lives, and support your local comic book shop. All right, dudes, I'll see ya.